Some love stories don't begin with a glance. They begin with a prayer. Long before two hearts meet, God is already at work, preparing each one for his perfect purpose. Every morning, Ebun gave the first moments of her day to God. Before the demands of work, before the noise of life, she sought his presence. She believed that no day could truly begin until it began with him. Across the city, another young believer was doing the same. Tobi loved God with all his heart. Success mattered to him, but becoming the man God had called him to be mattered even more. He had learned that true strength is found on your knees before the Lord. Neither of them knew the other existed. Yet heaven was already writing a story neither of them could see. A few weeks later, they both attended the same Christian conference.
We praise
The atmosphere was filled with worship, laughter, and lives hungry for God. It felt like an ordinary gathering, but for two people, it would become the beginning of something unforgettable. Then it happened. A notebook slipped from Ebun's hands. Before she could pick it up, someone else did.
Oh, thank you.
Their eyes met for the very first time. It was a brief moment, simple and unexpected, but sometimes God uses ordinary moments to begin extraordinary journeys. As the day went on, conversation came easily. They discovered they shared the same love for Christ, the same passion for serving others, and the same desire to live lives that honor God. What began as a conversation slowly became a friendship.
I missed you today.
Days became weeks.
Same here. This was the best
Weeks
part
became
of my day.
months. Phone calls turned into long conversations. Coffee became their favorite excuse to spend time together. After church, they would walk and talk about faith,
good to be
purpose,
together.
family, and the dreams God had placed in their hearts. Without saying it aloud, love quietly found its place in both of their hearts. But not every beautiful beginning immediately becomes a beautiful relationship. One evening, as Tobi prayed, he sensed God asking him to wait. He didn't understand why. Everything felt right. Yet deep in his heart, he knew he couldn't ignore God's voice. So he stepped back. His messages became fewer. His calls became less frequent. The silence that protected his obedience became the silence that wounded Ebun. She searched for answers but found none. She questioned herself. She questioned the friendship. She even wondered if she had imagined everything. But instead of allowing disappointment to pull her away from God, she ran closer to him. She cried. She prayed.
I am ready now.
She surrendered. And in that quiet season, God began healing places in her heart she didn't even know were broken. At the same time, God was also working in Tobi. He was teaching him patience, teaching him trust, teaching him that love built on God's timing is stronger than love built on human emotion. Time passed. Not days, not weeks, but years. Then, one day, their paths crossed again.
This time there was no confusion, no pressure, only peace. The people standing before each other were no longer the same people who had first met at that conference. They had grown, they had healed, they had learned to trust God even when his plans were difficult to understand. As they talked, Tobi finally shared what had been in his heart all along. He explained why he had waited, why he had chosen obedience even when it hurt. Ebun listened with understanding instead of anger, because during the waiting, God had also changed her. Together they bowed their heads in prayer, not asking God for a relationship, but thanking him for his faithfulness. Soon after, beneath the warm evening sky, Tobi knelt before Ebun. With a heart full of peace, he asked her to spend the rest of her life with him.
Will you marry me?
This time there was no fear, no uncertainty, only confidence that God's timing had been worth the wait. She smiled through joyful tears and said yes. Their wedding was simple. There were no extravagant decorations, no grand display, just two hearts surrounded by people they loved, making a covenant before God. As worship filled the room, they were reminded that the greatest gift they had received was not simply finding each other, it was learning to trust the one who brought them together. Sometimes we think God is delaying us. Sometimes we wonder why our prayers seem unanswered. But God's delays are not his rejection. They are often his preparation. Because when heaven writes your story, every chapter arrives at exactly the right time.